Dates or date sugar?
No, dates.
Okay.
I just soak them and then grind them up, and it's a carrot cake recipe I've had for umpteen years. But and then you add other things and just let it cook for about 5 minutes and let it cool, and then you add the flour. So sometimes it doesn't, sometimes the texture of it isn't as moist as I'd like. I don't know if it's because it's got a little too much flour in it, or but we like it.
You must bake it then, but it kind of sounds like it's almost raw, partially raw.
No, it's a cooked cake.
Okay.
Yeah, it's after you let some, the carrots simmer and the dates in the water, they're all blended, and then I add raisins and nuts, and but the carrots they kind of simmer for about 5 minutes. And
well, I like that recipe too. Does it have oil in it?
It has a third a cup of oil, or you can substitute applesauce. The original recipe, I think called for 1.5 cups of sugar, but I don't use sugar anymore. So, I mean, I look at some of these recipes and think, I ate those.
I know. I know. Well, I like that recipe, and then I'll experiment with it without oil, since I don't use oil or sugar. And
yeah, you can just sub applesauce. I just use unsweetened applesauce.
Yeah.
Well, I bet it's good. I like carrot cake a lot. I didn't put one of those in my cookbook because I didn't have one at the tip of my fingers. And I had too many recipes, and I was eliminating them instead of
she's going delete.
Yeah, and Charlie said, don't take them. No, don't take that one. Don't take that one. I was, well, they have to go. They have to go. We can't. I didn't want more than 300 pages. I gotta go. No more. Okay, let's.
Yeah, that carrot recipe sounds delicious, especially I love with the dates and the apple sauce.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just I'll send a picture of that.
Yeah, that'd be good. It looks like I'll have to send out another follow-up email with more recipes, because not everybody sent their recipes. Like, I only got a few.
Well, I love Tony's stuffing recipe. Oh my gosh. At the potlucks, I always make sure I get some of her stuffing.
Well, happy Halloween, everyone.
Oh, and speaking of Tony, there she is. Did you hear what I said about your stuffing recipe?
I did. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really gonna miss the potluck this year.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't believe we're breaking our stream. This would have been our 18th year.
Wow.
I know. I can't believe that we're just having to pass it up.
Paul, trying to drive to Anchorage that year, it was really icy, and I contacted you, Delisa, and I made my stuff and I had it all in the freezer. And anyway, I couldn't go because the roads were so bad. And anyway, the year after that, they started having vegan potlucks here in Fairbanks, but of course, there's been no potlucks this year.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I know that from my memory, from my time way back as a kid, is that how the Thanksgiving weekend was always terrible weather. I don't know why it would come so predictably, but I can remember, being snowed in and things like that, where, more snow than usual and not being able to actually drive, or super cold. One of the years we did our vegan Thanksgiving, I remember it was 18 below here, which is pretty cold for here. If that had been Fairbanks, that would. Yeah, we were having it in Wasilla that year, and it's like, oh man, that was probably before your time, Merida.
Yes, it sounds like it.
Well, Delisa, I saw it was 0 degrees in Wasilla today.
Yep, that's right. We got down to about -2 at the coldest.
Wow.
That's a lot worse than here. A lot worse.
What's that?
A lot worse than Fairbanks.
What was your temperature, Mary?
So let's see. I think 9. I think about was the high. It got cold today. Let's see here. When you're in college, it's 7. Yeah, and oh, actually, it's going below 0. I didn't want to look at that. Yeah.
Let's be in denial.
Yeah, but so I like to look ahead. 27 next Saturday.
Woohoo!
So we'll go back outside and work
Sweet.
again. It'll change by then, but I don't like to look at. But it's pure sun for this whole week, so that makes a difference. It's always so beautiful to see blue skies,
Yeah.
the white clouds of the snow, and that golden sunlight.
Yeah,
Just can't beat that.
right.
Well, whenever it's cold, it's clear and you get the sun. So it's like you get one or the other.
So true.
Unless the wind is blowing, and then
Yes. Yeah. And then it's below freezing.
well, it feels terribly cold, even if it's not so cold on the thermometer. It's like, oh, brr.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm surprised we don't have more people here tonight.
And me.
they're showing up lately. I mean, late.
Lately.
Yeah, because I know quite a few people opened the email. This is a big secret, but nobody ever knows this. But I'm going to tell you the big secret is when I send out my group emails. Oh, you can't hear, Tony? I'm talking loud. I don't know why. When I send out a group email, I can see who opens and who clicks. I can't do that on my personal email, but when I send the group email, then I get to see how many people open and how many people click on it. But quite a few people seem to be interested in this holiday theme.
Yeah.
So
Could be just because it's Halloween and people have kids or
People are
grandkids or other
afraid to
food.
come and be scared on our Zoom call.
This is the first year I haven't handed out trick or treat candy. I do every year forever, but not tonight. I decided to pass it.
Yes.
Yep,
I
it's
did
awfully
too.
cold for children out there.
Did the children pass or did you just pass?
Well, so far no one's rung the doorbell, although I do have it dark. Because here where I live, it's an old person's area, so lots of children come. They know the grandpa and grandmas are a soft touch, but no one's come so far.
Yeah, well, between the lockdown and the cold weather, probably isn't going to be a big Halloween night.
I think you're right. Yeah, they're opting for not the parties. So then they said, well, maybe more of them will come out in the air outside and trick or treat. But I've not seen any sign of that here yet this evening, and I'm not going to take care of it now.
And normally when it's on a Saturday, you get inundated because it's not a school night.
True. That's
But not
true.
this year.
Yeah. There
Well,
are parties here in Palmer. I'm just amazed how many are advertised, regular parties
For kids, you mean?
for adults and children. Yeah. And, they're just advertising it and I'm like, wow, okay.
Well, before we move on to the the holiday discussion, just in case some other people join us, how about if everybody shares a memory of one of your notable Halloweens as a child or an adult, whatever you want to remember in terms of something that was kind of memorable. Anybody remember something like that?
I do.
Okay.
We had a lady in our neighborhood who always made homemade root beer, and she'd get some like a cauldron, kind of put underneath it things that kind of made it look like a fake fire, and then she would use dry ice. Well, I think she used dry ice, but anyway, she had kind of like the vapor type stuff coming up out of it, so it must have been dry ice. But anyway, when you came to her house, and trick or treat, she wanted you to come in so she just wanted to see your costumes. What are you today, and then she'd give you a little cup of root beer. So and she would always dress up like a witch, by the way. It was
Oh.
a nice memory.
You weren't scared.
No, she was a very nice lady. I mean, we knew her. She lived in the neighborhood, but Halloween was a big thing for her because she liked to dress up and she loved to see the children.
And so where was that? Where were you
It
living?
was in Utah, in Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay. Well, great. Who else wants to share a Halloween story?
Jeff one?
When I was a kid, I do not remember trick or treating. All I can remember was tricks. I mean, we used to go to somebody's doorhouse and we'd stick a toothpick or something in the doorbell and we'd run away. Like that.
What about the flower and then stocking? And
Oh yeah, as kids, we used to take a woman's silk stocking, put flour in the end of it, and just hit the kid on the back of his shirt with the flour, leave a white spot. Things like that.
What state was that?
what state that was?
New York.
What
Up
a
to date.
hooligan.
I thought you meant it was a, trick against you. Now I'm realizing you were doing the tricks.
Yeah.
I don't remember any treats. There was no candy that I remember. I don't know.
Did you say things? Did you say trick or treat or anything like that?
Oh, no. We didn't say anything. We just ran. We just did tricks.
Well,
Or
my
we used to take movie film, the old nitrate stuff, and it burns with an awful smell. And we'd put some on the front porch stoop or something, and we'd light it, and we'd ring the bell with the toothpick and run away. And they'd say this. That's all we did.
I think it must be a generation thing because my mother told me that when she was a kid, which would have been in the 1920s, the big mean boys. So I don't know what that means. Probably people like you, Frank. they would come over and I guess they would say trick or treat. I think that was it. Then if you didn't give them a treat, then they would do something. But they would do things like turn people's outhouse over, things like
Oh,
that were pretty mean things, But that was apparently what the trick or treat was about, is that, if you have to pay me to not do something mean to you. So things have changed a little bit. Well, who else wants, this is fun. Who else wants to share an interesting, memorable Halloween? Mary?
Well, so I would have said something about our son's fun houses or something, but since you said childhood, and then I was flooded with all these memories that I haven't thought about. But I also would like to first say that I heard some really great scary stories on NPR today. If anyone else heard that, it was terrifying. So anyway, this was in outside Detroit, Michigan area, and we had the night before Halloween, it was Devil's Night, and I didn't do it, but people would. I think I did some toilet paper though. They would toilet paper the trees and things like that, or they would soap windows. So that was really bad, but it was just soap. So you have to watch for all of that. So there was all of that the night before, and then we would take these pillowcases, and we had our costumes on, and my brother and I, and we'd go door to door, and it was just, I really enjoyed going to the homes, and some people would talk to you, and at that time, if we got raisins, I didn't like that, because I wanted to have candy back then. Although my mother never let us have candy, that's why I really wanted it on Halloween. And then we had to she made us sort it out. We couldn't have any saccharin or anything like that. We could only have certain ones. But we really do a lot of that trick or treating, and it's just, I remember having my corduroy coat, which was with flannel lining in it, and all the oak leaves and the acorns and the burning leaves around that time. It's just was wonderful back then. And I'll distinctly remember going to some houses that the one I really liked the most is they were playing classical music very loudly. I don't know, I just happen to remember this. So, so to me, that was a wonderful time, except for the Devil's Night stuff.
That's great. By the way, welcome, Kristen. Good to see you. And is that Jerry? Jerry Prime?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Hi.
welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So we're just sharing some stories of memorable Halloweens, if you can remember, from any time in your life, whether you're a child or an adult. So who else? This is fun. Who wants to?
I have one. I remember going trick-or-treating with my neighbor next door, and I had a husky puppy at the time. And I put the puppy in her yard. And when we came back, he bit through the fence, the wooden fence, and it was a sizable hole so he could get into our yard, which was next door. So he bit through a wooden fence, you know, really large, and got himself through to our yard because he heard my husband talking and he wanted to get to him. So it was, yeah, we had to fix the fence, of course, but it was funny. It was rather, you know, at least he went into our yard.
He knew where home was.
Yes, yeah. It was interesting.
Thank you. So Tony, did you say you had a story?
I sure did. I remember like sights and smells. I remember when you'd mentioned about oak leaves, there was bonfires that would be burning. We'd go door to door. And back then it just seemed like we weren't at all fearful. I took my two little brothers and we'd be out for hours unsupervised and fill an entire shopping bag to the top, each of us. And when we get home, we were not allowed. We could have a piece of candy before we went to bed. Mom was very fussy. And it would go up in the closet and then she would dole it out. We'd get maybe a piece or two in our lunch. I see nodding heads. But mysteriously, my mother's favorite was Tootsie Rolls. And whenever at the end I'd look through the bag, sometimes I'd sneak in it. Every Tootsie Roll was gone. And I would question her later and she'd say, were you in the candy? Well, I'd given myself away then. Anyway, it was really a fun time when we dress up and everyone would show off their costumes, and it seemed like such an innocent pastime. And I enjoy it here in the past few years, particularly with the little youngsters coming at the door, pointing at themselves, you know, showing how cute they look, and they are. Anyway.
That's great. When I used to be a school teacher in elementary school, the kids loved Halloween. They would be so excited about Halloween, way more excited than they were about Christmas, which really surprised me. Like for weeks before Halloween, they would be talking about what they were going to be and how they were going to dress up. This was in Valdez, so there wasn't a lot going on in Valdez except whatever entertainment you had for yourself. But I was just amazed. I mean, I liked Halloween as a kid, but they really liked Halloween. So, Anne, do you remember a story?
Well, yes, I do. One of the things to point out is in England, they don't celebrate Halloween. And of course, they don't celebrate Thanksgiving, obviously, either. So for me, when I came over to America, these were two holidays that I had never even celebrated before. So it was quite an eye-opener when I see normal, highly educated people turning up looking like all kinds of weird things. But my favorite story, and I say favorite in inverted commas, was something I never did again, but it just happened that I took my UAA sanitation students on a field trip, and it just happened to fall that year on a Wednesday, which was our sanitation class. We went to the Anchorage School District Central Kitchen, which is, you know, everything is highly sanitized and they're very careful who they allow into the kitchens. And I turn up, and to my horror, everybody in the class had ganged together and decided that they were going to all dress up in the weirdest, most incredible outfits. And as they got more weird. The more students that, the first one turned up and I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't even think it's Halloween. And then the next one turned out was even more weird. And there was this big discussion from the kitchen manager of whether they would allow us in the kitchen with these flowing gowns and all kinds of weird outfits. But eventually they allowed us in, and it was so memorable. I had to take a picture of these students all dressed up. So that's probably my most memorable. So we never ever went on any field trips on Halloween ever again.
You learned.
Oh, I learned the hard way.
Well, that's great. Well, Kristen, do you have one to share?
Yes, I do. And Anne, I find that really interesting. Hi, Anne. I haven't
Hi
seen
there.
you in
Hey,
forever.
Kristen, nice to see you. Have you been riding? I love your hat.
I thought that we needed to dress up somehow.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get it. Yes. You were ready for your field trip.
I haven't been riding since like 8th grade, so I still haven't. But I was in London 2 years ago for Halloween, and Piccadilly Circus was crazy. It was
Oh,
really
wow.
cool. So at the same time, they were decorating for Christmas. So the equipment, it's like fire trucks, huge equipment to string lights way high up in between all the buildings, because in London they have so many buildings on these narrow roads. They can have the lights string across the road very high up, and all the workers that were on the ends of the ladders were dressed like superheroes. They were dressed like Spider-Man and Superman, and it was really fun. But the other, I think that the most memorable one for me was 4 years ago. I was finishing my 200-hour yoga teacher training, and this portion of it, we spent a week in Mexico, and we happened to be there over Halloween. So it wasn't actually the 31st of October that was so special, but the November 1st for the Day of the Dead, we, like 5 of us out of the group, we went to a very small town that we were in, to the heart of that. And they had the most beautiful displays. It was a little bit of a competition of each family having this little booth that they decorated with photos of the people that had passed, and all of the beautiful flowers and candles. And then they had performances that were throughout the night on this little stage. It was a fantastic experience to really feel the culture and be a part of it. And as much as we were taking pictures, they were taking pictures of the 5 Americans that totally stood out like sore thumbs while we were there. But I'm so grateful that I was able to experience that in a small community and really see how they celebrate it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Hi, Sue Ann, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can't see you though.
Well, let me see if I can figure it out.
There should be, if you put your cursor down at the bottom of the screen, there should be a thing for video, and you can.
I just did it. Win-win.
Yes. Hi, Gwen.
Hi,
Wonderful.
nice to
Great
see everyone.
see you.
Now I know how it works.
Yes, congratulations. We're in the
Thank
Zoom
you.
era now.
Well, I'm a little late. I apologize. I've had kind of an interesting day. So,
Is everything okay?
well, my refrigerator died, so I spent the afternoon emptying it.
Oh,
Thank goodness we have the deck. I have a deck and lots of boxes, and I have a new refrigerator coming tomorrow. Pardon
Oh,
me?
good.
Yes. It was kind of a surprise, but not really. You know, things come in threes. This is number 2. This is number 2.
Well, I'm trying to ask what the first 2 were.
Well, the first one was my humidifier on my furnace.
Oh,
So I had spraying water everywhere.
oh,
Oh, no.
I figured out how to turn it off. So learn as we go. No, I kind of knew what to do. So
Yeah.
I
Good.
was given a gift. I know how to do some things. Either that or I was paying attention, one or the other.
That's good. Well, you got in too late to know what we were doing, but we were just sharing stories about Halloweens that we've had in the past, whether we were, as children or as adults, that stand out in our minds that were somehow memorable. So if you'd like to share, we'd like to hear it.
Well, I can tell you that the person I was married to for 25 years loved to dress up for Halloween, and he would scare everybody in the neighborhood. He was kind of he was an actor, but mostly he was in broadcasting, but he liked to, get into makeup and do stuff, and he'd be something really awful to the neighbors' kids. He'd be out in the woods and
Oh no.
yeah, it was like, okay, I'm so embarrassed, but it turned out okay. Halloween is not my favorite holiday at all. I've never liked it, ever. Don't know why.
Oh, I have a memory. My mother, when I was in grade school, used to make our Halloween costumes. And she made this costume for my brother. He was a devil. And so she made it out of bright red felt. And we also had a very heavy, wet snowstorm on Halloween night. And so while he was out trick-or-treating, he was getting wet. And we lived in a rural area. And so my parents would load us all up in the pickup and we go over to a little subdivision where we could trick-or-treat. And every time he would get out, he would get wet. And when he'd get back, he'd sit on my mom's lap and her whole lap was just bright red. Felt, the dye running out of the felt. It was memorable.
Well, actually, when I think about your story about being out when you were young, I remember going to all the farms because I grew up in a farming community and ended up at my grandmother's. We had to bob for apples if we wanted a popcorn ball.
Oh.
I didn't like that either, but I liked the popcorn ball.
So you bobbed for apples to get a popcorn ball instead of to get an apple?
Yeah, we had to do both. You had to get an apple, bob for the apple, and if you got the apple, then she would give you a popcorn ball.
Did you say what state that
It was her. It was just her sense of humor. What can I say?
That was your trick so you could get a treat.
Exactly. I never liked that part either. Just give me the popcorn ball.
Where was that?
That was in Minnesota, my grandmother's house.
Yeah. Same in Michigan. That's why it was
Yeah. Being out in the country in a farming community, yeah, we did like you did, Charlie. You get in a vehicle and you go from one place to another, and
Right.
yeah. Just so you know, my house is locked down. All the lights are off in the back, in the front of the house. Hopefully, no one will show up tonight. Not my thing, that's for sure.
Well, I remember we moved to Alaska when I was 6 years old, and we actually were living in Houston, Alaska, which is out past Houston, out near Willow, before you get to Willow. And it was the end of the road in those days, and it was 1957. And so we went, it was 30 degrees below zero on Halloween, and we had moved up from Louisiana. And so it was very cold, but it was a big adventure anyway. And yes, talk about rural. It was a long way to any place. We rode the bus 2 hours to get to school in Wasilla, which made it seem like it was a long ways away, but it wasn't that far. It's just we had to go all the way down Big Lake Road and back and everything. But anyway, so on Halloween we dressed up. I don't know what I was dressed as, but it was, again, get in the car or truck, whatever we had, and drive from one house to the next. But it was so cold, that we couldn't stand to be outside very much. So if any of you have been around this part of the country very long, you might remember the Teelan's store. anyway, Teelan's store was the only store in Wasilla at that time. It was, you know, an all-purpose store. And Mr. and Mrs. Teeland were, you know, I mean, it was a very tiny town. So they were, you know, nice public leaders in the town. So we went to their house, which their house was at the back of the store. And they gave us apples instead of candy. And it was like, wow, this is a, you know, a great big apple. But I mean, fruit was probably pretty expensive then, you know, up here. But I didn't have a great appreciation for it. But it was so cold out that they invited us, our whole family. It was my parents and 4 children. So there are all 6 of us. They invited us to come in the house, and she gave us hot chocolate. And then, and they had a TV. We didn't have a TV. We didn't even have electricity or phone or any of that stuff. So anyway, we went in and they had their TV on, and the Frankenstein movie was on. And we stayed and watched Frankenstein. And I was only 6 years old, and I was really terrified. I did not like that at all. So I'm with you, Sue Ann. I mean, it was fun to do the overall. I mean, I enjoyed being able to go trick or treating and things like that, but I didn't like Frankenstein. But anyway, the Teelans were very nice and let us stay there until we warmed up and had some hot chocolate and left with our, I guess we all had apples. So
Sounds
that
like
was
a nice memory.
our first Halloween in Alaska.
Hmm.
So Ann, do you have a camera now, or?
No, and because this is my only Zoom, I am not feeling like I want to rush out and spend $100 on a camera. You know, it's like if I just use it once a month, I don't feel it's worth it.
Okay. All right. I just thought maybe you had one now, because I knew you didn't have one before when we were meeting more.
Yes.
I actually ordered one from Amazon and it was pretty reasonable. I think it was
okay.
like $39.
Okay, because I had looked locally, which seemed like, you know, a good option when everything was open. And I was shocked that if your computer like this is an old computer, if it doesn't come with one, I was just shocked at the price.
You can use your phone as well, Anne.
Yes.
The camera on a phone works.
Yes, but I actually like sitting at my computer here on a big screen so I can really enjoy it.
So you can see us, but we.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I would say you're blessed.
That's right. You didn't know I had.
Well, if you enjoy seeing our faces, then you can imagine we would enjoy seeing yours too.
Well, you're very sweet and kind.
So.
I'm really interested though, Anne, so none of your instruction at UAA is online?
No, I actually very innocently assumed that they would say, oh, we'll get you a camera. But no, they didn't at all. They said, oh, you have your own computer and you bought a microphone yourself. And I said, yes. And they said, oh, we have instructors who have neither of those. So you're way ahead of many of them. So that shut me down.
How do you do food instruction without visual?
Remember, I'm not I'm a dietitian and nutritionist, so I don't show any food.
Okay.
So
I'm glad you were able to teach.
let's talk about holiday recipes. So I guess you all got the email that had the downloadable recipes, and Tara Miller sent the one about the holiday nut roast, and she's not here tonight, but I did make that nut roast and it was good. It didn't taste very Thanksgiving-ish to me. I mean, it had a little bit of Italian seasoning in it, but if you wanted it to taste more like, turkey flavor or stuffing type, then I would recommend that you would put in more of the Italian seasoning or sage, or more of that flavor, because it just tasted kind of like a regular vegan meatloaf type thing. It was good, but it wasn't, I wouldn't call it a holiday flavor. And I did send, as you saw, I'm sure, a link to a video that I made of how to make the holiday roast. So if anybody is motivated to make the holiday roast, all the instructions and what to do and when to do it are in the video. And you don't have to make one that big. If you make it with 4 blocks of tofu, it makes a pretty big loaf. And that's enough to serve 16. So, but the good news is you can freeze leftovers. So every year when we have some leftover, we do freeze. I'll cut it in like quarters and then freeze it in blocks so that I can take out a quarter of it at a time. And then that gives us 4 slices. So we have 2 meals out of it when we have some left over. So if you were motivated to do it, you can make a smaller version of it, or you could also make it and freeze it. So those of you who have been to our Thanksgiving potlucks, you've tasted it, so you know what it's like. So anyway, that's the closest that I've come to tasting the traditional flavors, and you've got stuffing and gravy and all of that. But of course, you don't have to have something that's that traditional. A lot of other people make a stuffed pumpkin or stuffed squash, and the stuffing has the flavors of it. And so then you don't have to mess with the tofu. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different options. I have to admit that early in my vegan life, I didn't know any other vegans, and I had no idea what I could have for Thanksgiving that was even slightly traditional. And so I made something that's kind of like a burrito bowl. It had Mexican, it was just like a big salad with lots of different, beans. And I didn't have cheesy sauce in those days. So I don't know. It didn't taste bad, but it was a far cry from the Thanksgiving that I make now with lots, all the traditional things. Because I really enjoy the smells and the look and the tradition of those kinds of flavors. And so I really like to be able to do that. But obviously you can eat anything on any day. It doesn't have to be those kinds of mashed potatoes and gravy and pumpkin pie kind of things.
What I think is so wonderful is that I've learned that those flavors and those smells don't really come from what people think they come from. It's coming from the herbs and the spices.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So yeah, learning that you can actually have that comfort, those sensations without coffee is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, you can put those flavors in lots of things. I do like the whole mashed potato and gravy and stuffing thing just because I like, I like that. But you can definitely get those flavors with lots of different things. So what are some of the things that I know, Merida, you shared a really interesting looking recipe,
It's
corn.
it's pumpkin and cornbread.
Yeah. Have you made it?
Yes, I have.
And does it taste like cornbread? Or does
Well, I think the recipe said if the grind of your cornbread was like medium or coarse, to go ahead and grind it up. I just put it in my little coffee grinder and ground up the cornmeal so that it was not as coarse. So I thought the texture of it was really good. I love pumpkin. I love pumpkin breads. Anything, pumpkin muffins, pumpkin cookies, pumpkin pie, pumpkin roll, you name it. I love pumpkin. So when I first saw that recipe, I thought that's kind of weird, pumpkin cornbread. But I made it and we liked it. The only thing is I think I probably overcooked it 2 or 3 minutes, and I would prefer it a little more moist. But
well, it looked like a really good thing. I know this is a good example of what Kristen was saying about flavors, because pumpkin pie without the seasonings, the spices, is very bland. Pumpkin is much more bland than like sweet potatoes, for example. So if you don't put in, and of course, as a kid, I didn't like pumpkin pie, and I didn't know why I didn't like pumpkin pie. I just didn't like pumpkin pie. I mean, I didn't ask what was it about the pie I didn't like. But when I was an adult, I knew I didn't like cloves, and so I made pumpkin pie. I didn't put cloves in, because I knew I didn't like cloves. And I didn't expect to like the pie because it was pumpkin pie. And then I found out I liked it because,
With or without clothes.
well, I liked it without cloves,
Oh,
but I didn't like it with cloves. But you know, it still had cinnamon and ginger or whatever. I don't know what else it had.
allspice.
Yeah, but anyway, I was really amazed to find out that it was the, you know, that was the reason why I didn't like it. Since then, I've made myself like cloves a little bit, but I still don't prefer it. But anyway,
Well-
that's one of those examples of when you put those kinds of seasonings in something, then you've got that pumpkin association.
Mhm.
But that does look like an interesting recipe. I haven't tried it yet.
Well, I make pumpkin things all year round. I just like pumpkins, pumpkin stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not just, you know, Thanksgiving-ish.
Do you always use those kinds of seasonings?
Do I what?
Always use pumpkin pie type seasonings?
Yes. Not the pumpkin pie mixture, but you know, the cinnamon, the cloves, the nutmeg, and allspice. Yeah.
Yeah, you use the spices. Yeah.
So you use the spices in the cornbread, the pumpkin cornbread? You
No.
use
No,
pump-
I only made it once and I don't remember.
Oh,
I'd have to go back and look at the recipe. I don't remember what spices it had in it.
It has
Yeah.
none,
None?
none at all. I just looked at it, and that's why I was going to ask you, do you eat this like with chili, like you would a cornbread?
Yes, we just made it. We had soup and that's what we ate. We ate it with the soup.
Yes.
did you use fresh pumpkin or canned pumpkin?
No, I always just use canned pumpkin.
I can't find canned pumpkin. I've been ordering it at the store and I can't find it.
I usually buy it at Fred Meyer in the
Yeah, I haven't tried.
natural
Fred.
food section.
Yeah,
I always stock up around Thanksgiving, so get enough to last me for the year.
you know, instead of pumpkin pie, I make just pumpkin pudding. That's what I do.
Oh, I've never made pumpkin pudding, but I bet that's delicious too.
Sure, it is. It's just like pumpkin pie, only I don't make the crust.
Yeah.
I like to make pumpkin cheesecake because I love the flavors of pumpkin pie, but the cheesecake, it's like the thickness of it, it lingers on the tongue longer. It's so much richer.
I'm on Kristen's page. I like that. I love cheesecake. I love the texture. I think I'll have to make some
Yeah.
pumpkin cheesecake.
So Kristen, you make your own?
Yeah. I haven't made it since I've changed my diet to vegan, but before I was vegan, I found a chocolate cheesecake recipe and essentially substituted the pumpkin for the pumpkin and the pumpkin pie seasonings for the chocolate. So I kind of made it up myself, and I have found a really lovely cheesecake recipe that's vegan, but I haven't tried to modify it to the pumpkin yet. I think I'll try that this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like the next time we have a Thanksgiving dinner together, that some of you guys are gonna need to bring some of your specialties to the dinner. And we always have a variety of different desserts, not just pumpkin pie, but yeah, that would be, you'll have to bring your pumpkin cheesecake recipe.
One thing that's very satisfying, it's very old recipe,
I can barely hear you, Mary.
corn pudding.
Yeah, that's good.
Veganized corn pudding. I used to bring that to work years back, but I'm trying to eat healthier things.
It's very hard to hear you, Mary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry
That's
about that. And somebody came to my home, so I'm like, but it was the post office, so I thought it was a trick or treater. So okay, I have a few difficulties here, but yes, corn pudding is another thing, and that texture, it's kind of the texture that, in a certain way, like the pumpkin cheesecake, and there are tons of pumpkin cheesecake recipes. They're usually, I think, pretty heavy in the cashews, which is lovely, but you know, I've been eating a lot less of that since Delisa's course, and so I did have some date sugar. I have made the breads with just dates, but I really felt like I needed a little junk food there.
Delisa, are you going to do another cookbook? Have you thought of it?
I haven't really thought of it much. I mean, I've thought about how I'm really glad I did this one, but
Yeah, it's a good one. It's good. I like it.
yeah, I use it myself all the time. It's amazing. But if I have enough good recipes, but you know, I'm very particular because they have to taste good and they have to be healthy. And so, you know,
Right.
when we're talking
Right.
about some of these kinds of things, we're like, well, okay, could I vary that recipe to make it actually healthy? And if I could do enough, I might have a weak moment.
Yeah,
Hollywood
then if
from-
we make a cookbook.
Right. Yeah, I should tell you the story of how that one came about. I guess I told it in the cookbook, but for many years, I've been teaching these classes since 2006. So that's 14 years. So anyway, many people would say, you know, you should write a cookbook. You should write a cookbook. And I'd always say, I'm never going to write a cookbook because I barely would use a cookbook. You know, I would just kind of, if I looked at a recipe, I would look at it enough to just do it some other way. You know, I'd get an idea and then change it. And so anyway, finally, after I had had that conversation, I don't know how many times, about people saying you should write a cookbook, and me saying I'll never write a cookbook. So then one time I went to a class, and this woman in the class, Jackie, had been in my class a few times before, and she says, you really need to write a cookbook. And I said, I'll never write a cookbook. So she said, well, it wouldn't be that hard because you've taught all these different classes and you have all these recipes already. All you have to do is just put them together. It would just be not that hard. So this is an Anchorage class. So I had a whole hour to think about, like, well, I do have a lot of these recipes in all these different notebooks, and Charlie,
As we're driving home.
as we're driving home, and Charlie is asleep because they always go to sleep. I would drive home and he would sleep. We got home and I said, Charlie, you'll never believe this. He says, what? I said, I think I'm going to write a cookbook. Because he'd heard for years, I'm never, because he always told me I should too. And he'd always, and because I wouldn't even write down my recipes, you know, I would make something up and then I'd never be able to make it again. And so he had a little notebook for me in the drawer. He put a sign on it, Delisa's recipes. He put a pencil in there. And then I would try something and then he'd say, did you write it down? I'd say, no. And
Now you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them dirty.
so when I told him, I think I could write a cookbook, and he was going, what? And so I explained why, and he said, okay, I'm in. So then so that was the beginning of it. Yeah. But anyway, it was not quite as easy as that. Because I had to improve a lot of those recipes, because I had, you know, I'd learned a lot over those years, and some of those recipes were not as healthy as I would make anymore. And so I couldn't put something in there that I didn't think was healthy.
Right.
So anyway, it was more work than I thought it would be. But anyway, I am glad I did it.
Yeah, you did a great job, and you helped all of us. You helped all of us have all these recipes.
Well, thank you. I am glad that I did. And it surprises me that I actually follow my own recipes now. But in terms of another one, I don't know. I mean, I guess I wouldn't completely say never again, but
Yeah. No, I'm not.
it's not on the calendar yet.
No, you do what you want to do. I was just curious. I was just curious because this one turned out so well that I thought, oh, another one. You know.
Yeah, well, I guess this would be a good time to think about it. So you guys can all send me your favorite recipes and then I'll try to tweak them and make them as healthy as I have to make them.
Well, that's an idea. We could all share our recipes to you. Yeah.
And then we'd see whether we could make it, make it tasty and healthy. Okay, who has some other questions or about any of those recipes that were shared in the email that I sent out, or thoughts about them, or other things that you are thinking about in terms of recipes?
Well, I'm by myself and I want to cook something that isn't too difficult. Just something easy. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of what to do for myself that would be tasty and kind of like Thanksgiving, but it doesn't matter. I don't know. I think most people have at least another person in their home, and that always inspired me when I had somebody else. But by myself, it's different.
Yeah,
It takes getting used to. Yeah.
right. I know you lost your husband. How long ago did you lose, Bill?
Well, just November 13th. Today's the day I brought him into the hospital 2 years ago, just 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm so sorry about that. Well,
Yeah.
the suggestion I would make if it were me is, and I didn't want to make something that was hard to do, I would just buy like an acorn squash or some other kind of squash that's not too big, cut it in half, scoop it out, and stuff it with, regular stuffing.
Sure.
And
Sure.
then you have that kind of, it's a little centerpiece thing. It looks pretty.
Yes.
Flavors, and then you can make whatever else you wanted, if you wanted to make mashed potatoes and gravy and whatever, and then you'd have a nice little holiday thing that would be pretty easy.
That's a good idea because I pick up my groceries and they, I go to the store and then they put them in my trunk and I don't really shop, but they gave me, instead of kabocha squash, they gave me acorn squash. So I have about 3 or 4 of them. And I thought about that. That's exactly right. With vegetables and maybe some quinoa and mushrooms and all kinds of things in there. Yeah, because I do like that. So that's a good idea, Lisa. Yeah, thank you.
I just how easy it is to cook a hard skinned squash in the Instapot. Like that was so nice. Instead of trying to hack and hack and hack away to get it split open or to be able to roast one in that oven, you get them if they're small enough, like an acorn squash, to put it in the Instant Pot and let that do the initial cooking, and then it's so easy to cut open and you can bake it from there. It's wonderful.
So I wanted to pass on that yesterday I just wanted a little treat and I didn't have anything made like the pumpkin bread, and so I took sweet potatoes and I just sliced them up like French fries, or those chunks like that, and I just baked them and they just oozed sweetness and goodness. It was like candy and it was so delicious, and it felt very holiday-ish and festive. Just a stinking darn sweet potato made you feel good, filled you up, and you didn't have to do anything. So the squash is just like that, the same idea, and throw a few pomegranate seeds on there and
Sure.
some holiday-ish, just some fresh spinach and something like that.
Yeah, and ground ginger and pecans I put on my sweet potatoes too. That really give it a nice flavor, especially around the holidays or something. Yeah, that's a good idea. I love sweet potatoes. Yeah, so I was thinking I would add that to the squash. Yeah, so I'm developing my dinner.
There you go. That's good. And you're not the only person here who lives alone. So some other people are probably getting some good ideas too. So, and sweet potatoes, yams are so sweet already.
Yeah.
I don't know why anybody ever thought you had to add brown sugar and all that stuff to them. They're delicious the way they are.
I
And
agree.
it's also nutritious and flavorful. They have more flavor than the squash, but it's a little harder to stuff them because they don't have a hole.
Yeah, right.
Although you can scoop it out and make it part of the stuffing.
Sure. Yeah, good
I think
ideas.
stuffing anything makes it look,
Yeah.
like stuffing bell peppers. And
Yes,
what else could we stuff? Mushrooms,
mushrooms, yeah, mushrooms,
not that they have a scoop out of them, but yeah.
any kind of squash or even
Right.
pumpkin. You
Right.
can, stuff a pumpkin if you
Yeah.
want.
At one of our potlucks, our Thanksgiving potluck, we had a guy that came to the potluck and he brought a big pumpkin that was scooped out and he'd made soup. I mean,
Yes.
he didn't exactly follow his, everybody has an assignment what to bring. And so he didn't bring what his assignment was. But anyway, what he brought was very good. I can't remember what the soup was, but it was some kind of squash soup, pumpkin soup. And it was a big pumpkin. It was full
Yeah.
of,
Yes.
so.
Well, I'll probably make a butternut squash soup to go with my dinner too. I like that because I have butternut squash now from the store that they gave me that I purchased. So yeah. Yeah, I like the fall food, the squashes and the pumpkins and like you say, the herbs that we use because it's so tasty. They're so tasty.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Kristen, you're sitting in the dark.
Yeah.
We can't see you anymore. Well, I think it's really.
There she is. She's back.
Oh, yes. Do you have a light you can turn on? We can't see you.
No, it started knocking at my door, so I had to turn
Oh,
it off.
oh, okay. Everybody's hiding from the kids.
Because I love to see their costumes, but I
Yes.
don't have anything to give them, and I really don't want to encourage.
Yeah.
Especially during COVID. My neighbor has his house all decked out. His house was the one on the front page of the paper. And so we've had lines of cars that have passed through the neighborhood just to look at his house. He has all kinds of, yeah.
Wow.
And he's not going to open his door. What he did was he bagged his candy and he put it outside. He doesn't want to see the kids because of COVID.
Self-serve Halloween, boy.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that, people who live alone, I really, I feel for you because I'm so grateful that I have somebody to live with here. This one here. Plus a cat and a dog. So it's, the house does not feel empty. But whether you are by yourself or with a partner, I think it's really, it's not going to be the same kind of Thanksgiving that we've had.
No.
And I think it's a really good thing to do for ourselves to still make something nice for ourselves for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And, we don't have to break our back about it and, make food for a whole bunch of, 25 people or something, but, make some of your own favorite things and honor yourself because you're important enough to treat that way instead of saying, oh, well, it's just me. Why it doesn't matter? It's like, well, yes, because you do matter. And I think doing that is really a way to honor yourself and to honor the Thanksgiving energy around, Thanksgiving. And so I just would encourage us all to not say we can't have holidays because we can't get together. I think we can still honor the season and ourselves because we're worth it.
Delisa, I just have to compliment you. I thank you for saying that.
True,
It's very positive, and I need to hear that.
I definitely understand what you're saying as well. I've lived alone for quite a long time, and just recently I got 2 cats, and that definitely helps make the house feel a little bit more alive. And I don't know who else I would be talking to right now besides the Zoom classes that I have at the university, but it's not the same. And receiving instruction it's helpful to be seeing people, but it's still not the same as having a conversation and feeling more human. But I know that I will cook up a storm because I love having that later of leftovers for myself. I feel like that's my own gift to myself, and I love cooking. So it's hard to get me out of the kitchen anyway. So I'll be making too much food and fill the freezer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
then,
like a good plan.
and then you'll enjoy it over and over, which that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, so holidays can be difficult, and I haven't had the same kind of loss as you have.
Can you
And I'm
speak?
sorry.
It's hard to hear you.
Yeah, so I tried to turn the volume up. It's on full volume. So
Can you
That's
bring it
better.
closer to yourself?
um,
I think that helps.
yeah,
Yeah, that helps.
the holidays are difficult, but I actually, uh-oh.
We can still see you.
Really? Because okay, I can't see anything.
Oh, no, we can see you and hear you now.
So, well, yeah, I think, you just have to do whatever you need to get you from one moment to the next. And I actually, I do very well on my own at the holidays.
Good.
That's good.
I haven't suffered that same kind of loss that you've had. So I'm very sorry. And do you have any pets at all?
I do have a cat. I do have a cat. It's just that my husband and I were together for a long time, and it's a big change. And now with COVID, it's even worse. And so,
Right.
yeah, I wish I had a dog. A dog would be. My cat is lovely, and he's a bit of a nuisance though, because he escapes the yard, and I don't want him to, so I have to go out with him all the time. He was out today several times, and he looks at me to see if I'm watching him, so that he would want to jump over the fence, and I've chased him down couple times. I don't want him to go out into someone else's house during COVID, and anyway, he's a bit of a problem, but he's affectionate.
Sometimes when they're a problem, then you can't forget that they're there, and so you can't feel as alone.
Right. I'm not absolutely alone. No, I have the cat. Actually, he was Bill's cat. Bill, and he had this special bond, and he sits outside the bedroom and he sits in the bedroom. It's really quite, he's still loyal to Bill. It's really amazing. But he loves me too, and I guess I'm second choice. But but we've bonded, and yeah, it's been great. It's just that I think a dog would be more of a companion, although he jumps on my lap all the time. So yeah, I'm not really alone. No, it's just, it takes time to get over things. That's all.
Well, yes, it's
Sure.
a huge change.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, so taking a walk is helpful. I do have that dog, so I can take him out. He's very difficult. But yeah, that's helpful in the vitamin D, because where I live it's very mentally challenging to get through the winter. Very extreme here. It's much
Yes.
more extreme than Anchorage area. So
Right.
I hope that, and we have really good public radio here, like super astounding public radio, KUAC. So
Yeah.
that walking helps me a lot. Just saying. And, well,
Our next AVS Zoom call is going to be on this November 28th, which is the Saturday right after Thanksgiving. So I hope everybody will be back and we can kind of share how it went and what we made and all of that.
Okay.
And we're going to have Rachel Cummins and Michael White from the Forget Me Not Farm Sanctuary are going to come and share an update about what's going on at their sanctuary with pictures and all of that. So we have that to look forward to. But I'd also like to have kind of a conversation about how we did on our Thanksgivings, and
Okay.
be able to be with each other a little bit shortly after Thanksgiving. And then we'll be, of course, moving toward the Christmas holidays, and by then we should be really getting good at this, you know, solo holiday thing.
Can I please ask one last question on the recipes? On the holiday roast, I was looking at the recipe and I'm just wondering how long it takes to prepare that.
Well,
Day or so, overnight. Or I
yeah,
don't know.
you can't do it all in one day, you know, so you if you watch the video or just read through the recipe, you'll be able to see. But you have to mash it all up like the night before and season it and press it. And I have all the instructions how to do that. And then you press that for several hours. I just press it overnight, but you could press it for like 4 or 5 hours. And so it gets really firm. And then you scoop out the center and put stuffing in it. So I do that the next day. I put the stuffing in and then you bake it. And it takes about an hour and a half to bake it. So it's not really a hard thing to do, but you know, and you could make a smaller one, like instead of a 4 pounds of tofu, you could use 2 pounds of tofu, and then it would, you know, use a smaller colander and that kind of thing. It has really, I think it tastes really good, and it's very, you know, it's reminiscent of the Thanksgiving centerpiece kind of thing. So, but yeah, you do need to plan ahead. You can't, it's back like in the old days of making a turkey, you pretty much needed to like thaw your turkey out ahead of time unless you had a fresh one, you know, so you have to think ahead a little bit, but it's really not hard to do. And yeah, you'll have to let me know if you try it.
Freeze as well, or
It freezes fine. It's not as good after it's frozen. It's a little bit more crumbly, but the flavors are still just as good. The texture is a little bit more crumbly, but we always enjoy it.
Yep.
so it's really like a tofurkey roast that you could buy that costs a lot of money, and you can
Right.
have more of it. It's tastier when you make your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I've made carrot seed roasts with the gravy and things like that, but I haven't made the tofu one like that with the stuffing in it. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, watch the video because that shows you absolutely everything about it. And yeah, and you could just follow the instructions and do it too. But if you watch the video, then you'll actually get a sense for what it's supposed to look like and what to expect and everything.
Okay.
So.
I just wanted to add that one of my most memorable Thanksgiving meals, Delisa, was when I took your part 2 course. And I think, didn't you tell me you've now included that in all courses, regardless of what time of the year
Right.
it is? And it's unbelievable. And that rosemary is absolutely delicious. And my view is, because it does take a bit longer than like just mixing up a cornbread, it's worth making it larger so you can freeze it, as Delisa says, and then enjoy it. I think, you know, it's not exactly batch cooking, but if you're going to go to the trouble to make it, then why not make it using the recipe and then have extras? I love Kristen's comment about leftovers, but guys, that whole thing was that meal that you do in the part 2 course was probably one of the most memorable Thanksgivings I've ever had. And you just can't believe how delicious it is. Delisa, do you get that kind of feedback from people who take the course?
Yeah, people always like it. And, you know, it's a potluck. I mean, it's not a potluck, but everybody makes something that they're assigned to make. So I make the holiday roast, and other people bring all the other trimmings, the mashed potatoes and gravy and yams and salad and pumpkin pie and all those things. So it's a full meal. And I think the thing that impresses people the most is just the overall meal itself, not just the holiday roast part, but the overall meal has that, you know, you feel like you've had Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. Yes. You're not deprived at all.
Yeah. And I've had people who took the class who then went home and made that whole meal and for their families and friends. And they said it, you know, turned out and they were happy. But of course they got to see me making it. And I think when you see somebody do it, it's a little less worrisome, especially when you see like 3 pages of instructions and you go, oh, that's terrible, but I write all those instructions just so that you can actually do it step by step by step if you don't have a video. And so last year when I made the video, because we were supposed to be having our Thanksgiving dinner in our part 2 class, and it was in February, and we weren't able to do it because our class got canceled. So so that's when I had all this tofu in the house. Is like, okay, well, let's make a video of it. And so I provided it for them, but so now it's up on my website so that anybody can see it. So I think it is helpful to something that's not just, your standard, cake mix, add water. Sometimes it is helpful to see a demonstration. So speaking of demonstrations, I thought you might like to have a demonstration of how easy it is to make the Holiday Nog. Have any of you made it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to move my computer over to where you can see me in the kitchen. And this is a really quick thing, and I apologize you don't get to taste it. It's it's really tasty.
You put this on a different view.
Oh.
Nope, but you could tell me.
Well, it's easier to do it. You can watch. So you go up here, view, speaker. Okay.
Well, I don't know how this is gonna work because Red makes a noise and now.
Okay, so if everybody could just put yourself on mute for a minute. The reason I'm saying that is because if anybody makes a noise while I'm doing this, then the camera's gonna go just to you and it's gonna take it off of me. And since this is, I'm recording this, I want people to be able to actually watch the video and see it all the way through. So could you hand me the cookbook, please? Okay, so on page 255. Let's see, Jerry, did you know how to mute yourself? Okay. Oh, my ice is frozen to the bottom. Okay, well, I had all my stuff getting frozen or ready for me. Okay, so the Holiday Nog. So this serves 2 people. So this is soy milk, unsweetened soy milk. And I have discovered that soy milk works better than like almond milk because the commercial almond milk, if you're making your own almond milk, that'd be different. But the commercial almond milk is very much more watery and thin. And so this wouldn't taste as good. I've also used my own nut milk when I make this, but you can just use soy milk. And then we are going to put in some date syrup. And so date syrup is on page 239. And date syrup is just dates and water blended together. And so I put this in the freezer to cool after I mixed it up. So it's going to be kind of hard for me to squeeze it out. I forgot about it. So I'm going to see whether I like it less sweet than it calls for. So I'm going to make it a little bit less than 1/4 of a cup. This is frozen. That's not the intention here, but I should have set a timer and said, go take the date syrup out of the freezer.
Best laid plans.
Well, I thought I was being smart, you know, because I thought, well, the date syrup gets kind of warmed up when I blend it. You just blend dates and water in the Vitamix, but as you know, if you have a Vitamix, if you blend it very long, it warms up. So I thought, well, I don't want to put warm date syrup in here. I'll stick it in the freezer for a few minutes. Fortunately, it wasn't all day. Okay, so I'm just going to put in 3 tablespoons. 4 tablespoons would be 1/4 of a cup, but I like mine a little less sweet. I put this amount in there because people are pretty used to sweetened, quite sweet eggnog. So then I'm going to put in 4 pieces of frozen banana. And when I freeze the bananas, I cut them in 1-inch pieces. I'm not precise. I don't put a ruler out, but I cut them in approximately 1-inch pieces. And then I freeze them in a Ziploc bag. And then I know how much I'm taking out of the freezer. So 4 inches of, it's about like 1/2 of a banana. But since you're going to want to put frozen banana in so it'll get nice and cold, I recommend just when you've got some really ripe bananas, just cut some up and freeze them. So then you have them ready. Okay, and I'm going to put in just a bit of vanilla. It says 1/2 teaspoon. I'm not going to measure. It's about right. And a little bit of cinnamon. So this is where I do my cooking classes now. So on Tuesday nights, I do it kind of like what we just did. I sit at the table and talk to people for the nutrition lesson, and then I come over here, and Charlie made this counter a long time ago. And so we just move this over here so that I have a place to demonstrate this. And it says 1/2 cup of ice cubes, but you know, I put so much frozen stuff in there, I might just want 1/2 cup of water. So this is going to be too frozen to even blend if I'm not careful. So I'll use a combination of ice and water. If it's too icy, it won't blend. Okay, let's just turn this on. And make sure I don't still have blocks of ice in there. Okay, I think it's good. I'm going to put in just a couple of ice cubes. Thicken it up. So this says you can add 2 teaspoons of chia seeds. This would be ground chia seeds if you want to make it a little thicker. But I usually like it just fine without it. Okay, that's all there is to it. So I'm going to pour it in our glasses, and then I'm going to add the ground nutmeg on top. You can see that was like super easy to do. I always fill them really full to be a challenge to see if we can drink them without spilling.
This is my favorite part of the demonstration. I get to taste it.
Right. So I use fresh nutmeg. And if you haven't used fresh nutmeg before, it looks like a little nut. A nutmeg. And I use my zester, the same thing I use for like zesting a it's a microplane zester. And I just shred it on the top. And you don't have to use fresh nutmeg, but that gives it a really nice touch. And then you carefully toast.
That's yummy.
That is really good. I'm sorry that I can't share it with you, but I do encourage you to make it yourself. Charlie asked me, he's the designated shopper in our family. I don't ever go to the grocery store. So he asked me if I needed more nutmeg, and I told him, no, I probably have a 10-year supply because these little, I just shred just a little bit on the top. And so one little nutmeg thing will last for a long time.
Where do you get that nutmeg?
They just sell it in the spice section at Fred Meyer. In the bulk section, maybe they do in the small containers too, but I haven't bought it, since the whole lockdown. But let's go around again. I don't know whether they still have the bulk spice section or not. I have to show you. We have 3 seats here because Heidi sits on one chair and then we sit on our 2 chairs. She, if I sit on the couch, then she's happy to sit on my lap. But when I sit over here for like a long time, then she goes, well, what am I supposed to do? So I can't always hold her on my lap. So anyway, so now I pull up a chair for her and she understands exactly that she's got a chair to sit at the table with us. So anyway, if you haven't made the Holiday Nog yet, I hope you could see how easy that was. It's so worth doing. Oh yes, there's your fluffy doggy. Yes.
Pets in the Zoom have been so fun. My cat is laying just out of view, like making sure everything's okay.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing I do like about meeting on Zoom is that, when you get to see somebody in their home environment and you get to see them if they have kids running around, if they have pets or whatever it is. So it is kind of feels more, I don't know, real, like you're really there in your own setting.
It makes everyone feel, I think, a little more human.
Yeah. And I think we can use a lot of that right now.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Delisa and Charlie what type of dog you have. What breed is she? And she looks so pretty.
She's a Maltese who came to us via the Anchorage shelter.
Oh, and so what did you say she was? I didn't hear you.
Maltese.
Oh, Maltese. Yeah, adorable. Really cute.
Yeah, she's been just wonderful. We've had her for 9 years and she was 4 years old when we got her. So she's 13. But yeah, she's been a gem. I can't believe somebody spent a lot of money to buy her and then dumped her at the pound.
Maybe they moved. A lot of people let go of their pets when they move away. I don't know why, but they do that. And now during COVID, I heard that a lot of dogs and cats are adopted. Have you heard that? That people
I've heard that too. I know last spring a lot of people were getting pets because they needed company.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask if anybody else would be interested in having a Zoom conversation about what good gifts for vegans would be. Like, what's your latest, greatest gadget? Or maybe that would, if that would be before Christmas, or maybe an after Christmas, what did you get that is really cool? I know I just got the Tofuti food press, this brand. And can you see that?
A tofu press?
Yeah, it's called Tofuti, and it's a tofu press, and I love it. It really it's self-contained. It has a little grid on the bottom, so some feet, so that when it drains away from
What
the
makes the pressure on it?
this is actually a spring. I don't think I can.
Yeah, okay.
So
'Cause one I have has a spring too.
this is a dial, and you press it, you dial it down, and it will continue to press. Yeah, it is very like the spring one that you have, but this one doesn't have any exposed metal parts.
Right,
And
right.
I've really enjoyed it. Treated myself to it, but it just made me think of. I wonder what other gadgets people have that have really come in handy, because I know a lot of things in my kitchen that I used to cook changed when I changed my diet.
Right.
Well, something I think, Delisa, that you mentioned that I don't have that I'd like to look into is to make my own nut milk. You know, some kind of gadget that, I don't know.
Just
Do you
use
make it
your
in your,
Vitamix.
oh,
just-
in the Vitamix? Do you, is that good enough? Yeah? in the
Yeah, I
Vitamix?
just blend nuts and water.
Okay, okay, well, I'm gonna start that, although it's hard to get nuts nowadays too. You know, I think I have to shop at Fred Meyer's. I've been shopping at Cars and they're really out of a lot of things, so, yeah.
You can order them on Amazon too.
Yeah, Amazon is another one. Anyway, yeah, I don't like
Another place that you can buy food is Azure Standard. And it's a place you can order from, and they're located in Oregon, but there are 2 places in Anchorage that are drop-off points where if you order online, you can pick it up at somebody else's house. They pick it up. And I haven't ordered it from them in many years, at least 5, but I just put in an order this time, and they usually have these products and at really good prices. So
What is the company you're talking about?
Azure Standard, like AZURE, like the blue color, azurestandard.com. And you can go online. You don't have to order to see what's on there, so that you can look at their prices and you can get organic things, you know, organic beans and organic grains, because sometimes it's hard to find the organic version of things locally but you know, the beans have really gone up in price at Natural Pantry. And so the last time we went for beans there, and we buy 25 pounds at a time, it's like there was a bag that was over $100, and it's like, yikes, what happened? And the prices have gone up because of distribution issues, I guess, with COVID. And so anyway, I was able to order beans much more reasonably on Azure Standard. And of course, you have to pay shipping from Seattle. They'll ship it from their place to Seattle for free, but then they barge it up. And so I haven't paid for my shipping on this order yet, but the person who does the drop point said it's about 50 cents a pound usually.
So how do they find out where the drop point is?
You can see them on Azure. If you go to Azure Standard,
okay.
and then you'll see where it says drop points, and you put in your town. And so they list 2 of them in Anchorage. So anyway, if you're having trouble finding things.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
A lot less expensive online.
What's that?
It's a lot less expensive online for now. Organic beans.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure.
Well, you guys have been just really fun to spend this Saturday evening with. I'm so glad you showed up, and I really enjoyed just hearing everybody's stories, and I'm anxious to hear how your Thanksgiving goes after we have had that. And feel free to, send me any of your favorite recipes, and I'll maybe try to compile more of them. Instead of just a bunch of recipes that you find somewhere, I'd rather you just send me recipes that you've actually tried and that they are,
Right.
it's a favorite recipe, instead of just like finding some online or something. Because it's kind of a lot of work for me to, put it in a document and load it up in where you can get to it. So, but I'm happy to do it, but just,
Okay.
favorites, and then maybe I can send those out later.
You can also put them on the AVS website.
I
Okay.
like that idea.
Yeah,
Thank you for doing this, Delisa and Charlie.
sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Enjoyable.
Thank you for joining us. We would be very lonely here by just the two of us.
So there are 3 of you, remember, 3 seats. We've got
Right.
Heidi too.
Three seats at the table.
Heidi. Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Happy Halloween.
Yes.
So much.
Thanksgiving. Yes.
Bye bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.